Welcome to the Dream Design Job podcast, where we help product designers, new and old, connect and adapt to the latest challenges of forging an innovative career in the tech design space. Dream Design Job aims to look at the design careers from a continuously evolving human perspective, because leading human-centered, balanced lives is ultimately what helps us build truly human-centered products.
Hi everybody, welcome back to the Dream Design Job podcast. This is Patrici and Patrick is over here as well. And today we're going to accompany our blog post about effective design workshops, which should be up, and I'll put it in the show notes. And this one will go in depth on how to identify whether to hold a workshop or how to craft your own. And first off, let's go into my memory as a junior designer who I used to, I learned really fast what a Google design workshop was. And it was pretty clear what it was for. You're meant to come up with designs, be very collaborative with the team. But the way I communicated that at the beginning of my career was very different from how I do it now. And so I'll let us get into a conversation with Patrick, because Patrick is also a really great design workshopper, on how design workshops should be, formulated.
Yeah, I think there are different kinds of workshops you can run at different stages of the product development process and life cycle. I think a lot of the workshops actually come in the very beginning of that cycle. So, for example, during like the problem definition or like ideation, like discovery part of the life cycle, usually what I like to do is jump into like a Fig Jamboard or a Miro, or if it's in person, doing like a how might we exercise. And it is super important to like go through this process in the beginning, because you don't want to like anchor yourself to a specific solution. So a how might we is kind of like a blue sky exercise that helps your product partners and engineering partners, which both of those partners you want to have in the room itself, so that they, for a variety of different reasons, like I think the biggest reason for me is so they can get a sense of buy-in, and ultimately it kind of saves you more time in the future too, when they're in the same room and you make decisions or choices that lead to some direction in what you're building, so you don't have to have additional meetings with those same people. So it actually ends up saving time. But anyways, we'll do a bunch of how might we's, and that can be great to determine like any kind of like problem statements or like jobs be done statements. And it's also great to think about functional possibilities that we can build on top of whatever feature or solution that we're thinking about building out. The second exercise that I'm thinking about is based off of a time when you have your problem definition kind of mapped out already, and now you're jumping into like specific use cases, right? So you're thinking about, in what scenarios do I want to account for when building out this product or this feature, and then the exercise specifically for that would be like mapping out high level user flows per use case, and going through that with your engineers and your product managers, because some of the time, or most of the time, like they have the expertise and they know what are some of the constraints involved in these specific use cases that are going to be crucial in being able to build out a product that is feasible. So you definitely want to have those folks in the room. Also, I like to do like an information architecture kind of exercise so that the folks in the room, the engineers, the PMs, they have a good understanding of like how is it going to look? How are the users going to be able to navigate from section to section, from category or page to page? And those are two that usually happen in the very beginning um, of like the design process.
Yeah, and that speaks to the fact that with design workshops, the goals for them are not always to come up with a concrete design. And I think this speaks to what I was trying to get at with how I communicated design workshop as a junior designer versus how I learned to communicate design workshops now. And that is, well, let me just present the difference. When I was a junior designer, I would be like, oh, I'm so excited about Google Design Sprints. They're collaborative, they're what designers do. Let's hold a workshop without communicating the value of what that would bring to the other teams. It was more, I was speaking about design workshops from a design perspective, like, oh, this is a design culture thing that I want to do. And now it's definitely more about presenting the actual goals. So, like what you were saying, if I'm doing a use case development, I sell that to
Mm-hmm.
the people who are going to be in the workshop. I was not very good at selling before. I will be honest. And that's because I was learning. I was an early designer who was like, this is what a designer is supposed to do. Let me do the workshop. And now I have to entice people to want to do it because, and it comes easy as you get very specific about your goals. So I guess we can talk about like what are the actual goals of a workshop.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot of goals, and some are not necessarily um, like actually a lot of the goals related to these workshops are more centered around like collaboration and the benefits that come out of that than anything than the actual like solution you come up with.
Yeah.
Um, so one being alignment with your team, right? Alignment with your stakeholders, making sure that folks are on the same page. Um, Another goal would be that you dream big, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that you go into these workshops not being anchored to a specific solution or a specific direction. You really want to think about it from like a no constraints perspective. Um, so so that really you don't limit yourself to the kind of like tech that's available or time that you have to do to build something. Obviously, all those things are going to play factors into um, when you actually build the thing. But before actually deciding what you want to build, you want to think about blue sky things, um, and just for like future iteration's sake. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Also, another goal is like you want to be able to surface different kinds of mental models early. The way that customers think are not always the same in how you think they want it to be built, or what you
Mm-hmm.
think that they need.
Mm-hmm.
So
And it's different. What you think should be built is different from what an engineer or product manager thinks should be built too.
yeah, exactly. And it's good to get those kinds of perspectives because that's the great thing about being in tech and being a designer is that you don't rely on your own assumptions, um, and that you want to have a broad span of different perspectives to draw upon, um, so that you can build the best product for your specific audience. Um, and kind of like a goal that naturally happens as a natural byproduct of holding a workshop is having stronger relationships with the people in the room, with your cross-functional partners,
Mm-hmm.
making sure that these folks are all bought into the vision, into the solution, into the problem, ultimately saving you more time in trying to gain that alignment, trying to gain that buy-in later on in like the later on in like the build phase of that thing. And all this kind of combines into the ultimate goal of holding these workshops, which is to contribute to a concrete design. Right, you have an actual deliverable, you have like an asset that you can kind of always go back to and kind of do like a retro on, or reflect back on it and see like ways to improve the product, and kind of see like a timeline of like where you were and kind of like where you've been and where you are now. Those kinds of like assets are super valuable when you're trying to really describe when you're trying to even go back to your own process, and when you're like thinking about like case studies and things like that. Those are always helpful to kind of go back on and check out.
100%. And there's this one line that I presented about some design processes that I've been working on with the teams at work, and I presented it kind of like in retro style. And one of the takeaways from the presentation was the journey is the destination. And so workshopping is a huge part of the destination. It's not always visible to people until you get to that destination, but those who are a part of it, they will know like how it all contributed, because it's interesting. It's more of allowing yourself to just flow with the process,
Mm-hmm.
than be focused on how to get to X.
Yeah, I mean, I think people are really stuck on the solution, right? Like people want to be as efficient as possible. They're like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
we need to figure out a problem for this and we need to move fast. And I think oftentimes people sacrifice um, that process for speed. And what you end up risking is a solution that is not best for the end user.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you don't really realize that until it's too late, really, right? When it's further down the
Yeah.
process and it's too late, and you're like, and then what you got to do is you have to go back and spend twice as much time fixing that problem. When if you just invested into the workshopping, the collaboration beginning, you would have caught a lot of those problems early on before actually building it.
Exactly. Um, how would you figure out if your team needed a workshop, Patrick?
Yeah, I would say like there are two specific scenarios. One is there any kind of ambiguity in the problem statement, or during the discovery phase? Is there unclear expectations or requirements? um, in those situations, it is like that's like when I hear those words are like, oh, we're not sure what we're gonna build. That's when I'm like, we need a workshop then. Like we need to do some how might we's. We need to break down some like use cases and figure out like how figure out how do we clear up this ambiguity. Um, Another like time when workshops are really helpful is when you are presenting to different stakeholders, like an executive team, or you're trying to get budget for your product, and you need to be able to tell a better story. Not necessarily a story through this is how it looks, and like this is the user flow. What you really want to tell is an end-to-end flow, right? Like how is this how is this end user, how is this customer feeling in the beginning, and walk them through a whiteboarding exercise to kind of tell a cohesive story around um, feelings, empathy, and how your product is going to be solving that problem for them. And at the end, what is what is the aha moment, or what is the happy moment for that customer, when that for that end user, and mapping that out in with your PMs and your engineering partners. um, that kind of exercise really brings everyone together even more, because it's no longer about like, okay, what button are we adding into the interface, move this component, this card, like by like over by like 2 pixels. You get out of like that mindset of building it and more into the mindset of like, why are we doing this in the first place, so
Cool. Let's see. Did we miss anything? I think that is pretty much it for design workshopping. Um, Thank you for all of the insights as usual, Patrick.
yes.
Was a fun combo. And thank you everybody for listening. Again, if you can like this video, if you're listening on YouTube, subscribe to our channel, follow us on Spotify, and follow us on LinkedIn too. We have a LinkedIn and we also have an Instagram. You can always, of course, visit us at dreamdesignjob.com, where we have courses about design interviews. And until next time, we'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.